Mike, how was your weekend?
It was pretty good. Dodging thunderstorms. I was out on the golf course prepping for summer lacrosse tourney season to kick off this coming weekend. And you? How was yours?
We are at the end of spring sports, so I lived driving all up and down the coast of Connecticut, going to soccer and lacrosse games. So none of my home projects got done, but we are getting closer to summer.
There it is. Action-packed, as it should be. Youth sports. We could have a whole conversation about that going forward.
Oh, we will. Welcome back to Sideline Ascent. I'm Taryn Sheehan, former Division I coach turned professor, mom, and rec league basketball hype squad.
And I'm Mike Marich, former athletic director, coach, mentor, and someone who believes the people shaping athletes' lives deserve real support too.
Every week, we're bringing you the mentors you wish you had.
The lessons we wish somebody had poured into us, real conversations that go far beyond X's and O's, with mentorship that helps you grow, lead, and truly thrive.
Wherever you coach, on the track, on the court, or in the classroom, or even if you're just figuring it out as you go, this space is built for you.
Sideline Ascent is brought to you by Mindset Curated at mindsetcurated.com and Morgan Athletics at morganathletics.com, two organizations committed to elevating coaches and the athletes they serve.
And we are joined today with Julie Heyde. Julie is the director of track and field and cross country at MIT, where she has already led one of the most decorated seasons in Division III history. She guided the engineers to the Triple Crown, winning national championships in cross country, indoor track, and outdoor track, and was named the 2024-25 National Indoor and Outdoor Coach of the Year. Julie's teams have earned dozens of All-American honors, multiple region conference titles, and both men's and women's programs have become national contenders under her leadership. Before MIT, Julie spent 10 years at Boston College coaching All-Americans, ACC champions, and more than 40 NCAA qualifiers. She also coached at NC State and built successful high school programs in the state of Massachusetts. Julie, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to Sideline Ascent, and I think you have so much to share with your experience in Division I, Division III, the high school level, that I think this is going to be really helpful for a lot of our listeners.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Well, let's start out about your journey. So you were a college athlete yourself, coached high school, and then you were able to make that jump to the college level. Like, that's really impressive. Not always easy to do. So let's take it back from the beginning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was a track and field athlete at Boston College, and then after graduating, coached high school right away. Started coaching high school swimming and high school track. And for me, I really love that I got the chance to have the background in both of those sports. I was a competitive swimmer before track and field, so getting to work with a lot of high school students and work with other people in the area, coaching for 4 years at the high school level in Massachusetts, I think it helped give me the foundation that I still work with and still look back on with developing athletes. But then it wasn't kind of out of the range for me to jump to the college level. I took a graduate assistant position so I could do my master's degree and also coach swimming at the same time for 2 years when I went to NC State. And so for me, that was really how I made the transition. I was working full time in lots of different scenarios, and it was about the time that I decided I needed to, if I was going to make coaching really my profession, I had to make a go of it. And I knew, because I was teaching also, I'd worked in publishing and I worked in teaching. So I was teaching and coaching. And for me, it was really hard to give 100% to both of those professions. And I think so much of what I love about teaching is the same as what I love about coaching, that you're working on student outcomes. So that was a natural transition for me, but I knew I couldn't do both in the long term. And so I really wanted to make out a career of it and switch to the college range right about then. So 4 years post graduating.
It's awesome. Julie, thanks again for joining. I love hearing origin stories and makes me think about mine. And I worked in high school as well, not in the teaching capacity, more as an admin capacity. I actually think that teaching and coaching are exactly the same. You mentioned the student outcomes. I would really love to hear a little bit more about your origin, thinking about like the people that you've worked with and for, and how they maybe developed you, and maybe how that translates into your philosophy today of leading others.
Hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. So when I started at NC State coaching swimming is when I started there. The head coach who I worked with was really wonderful. He was able to give me a lot of responsibility. And I think that having a head coach who has the trust in the people that they have as their assistant coaches and even grad assistant coaches, just to let them try and just to let them learn. I was taught so much by the full time assistant coaches who were there, who were coaching the different event groups, by the head coach. And I think they really just welcomed me and giving responsibility to me and saying, all right, yeah, you try this or see how that goes. They looked at workouts I had written for high school level and said, hey, why don't you write some of these workouts? And I think being able to do that and not being afraid of somebody who's younger or not as experienced to be able to try things and show the college students, even just a different coaching cue or a different way of looking at something. As long as everyone, I feel this way now, as long as everybody is doing it with the right intention, it's not bad to have somebody give a little bit of information. And hopefully our college student athletes have learned from some great coaches along the way. And if something resonates with them and a cue might help them, or just even a language change, it might be asking them to do exactly the same thing, but they've heard it differently. I find all of those things really helpful currently. And I learned that mostly having been a grad assistant. And for me, another thing I learned in that experience, both with swimming and with track, is that the students need to love the school that they're in and the school that they chose, and how
Hmm.
closely tied success for the students on the track or in the pool or whatever it happens to be is to, you know, finding meaning in contributing to their campus or their college environment. So I think that for me, I learned a lot from those time frames. And when I transitioned from swimming to track and field, working with Raleigh and Lori and Chris at NC State, again, they were fantastic. They had already at that point one of the most successful college programs in track and field and cross country, but they had no trouble welcoming somebody like me who, could be an outsider. I hadn't gone to their school, but they didn't know me all that well, but they welcomed me there, and really I got to learn so much from what they do and how they treat students, how they treat each other. That really, I think, set the foundation for me. I mean, even now I feel like I could call Lori or Raleigh, and I see them often on the track, and just, they're happy for me, and I have loved being able to work with them. And they were very helpful in my transition to Boston College, because I left NC State, not because I wanted to leave NC State. I loved it there. Massachusetts is my home. BC is my home. I had gone there, and Randy Thomas, who was still the coach at the time at BC, he had coached the team when I was there. So he
Hmm.
knew me, and he had a position that was opening. And so we had a conversation about that. And even Lori and Raleigh had said, this is great for you. Do it if you want to do it. If you want to coach, just coach. And then when I moved to BC, it was just Randy and myself coaching the women's team. So Randy was definitely one of the best at saying, all right, here's how we do this. He let me learn everything. There was no way he could have, you know, done it all himself. He could have kept ownership of a lot of those things like admissions or recruiting or anything like that. But we met weekly, we met all the time. Not only were we good friends, he had enormous trust in me. And I think that for me gave me a lot of the help to do what I'm doing now, because it's not like any of us do this and don't make mistakes. We do. There's definitely things that we mess up, and hopefully it's paperwork, and hopefully it's not anything that directly affects the students in a negative way. But again, as long as you're doing it with the right intention and you know what you're doing, I mean, you have to learn, you have to continue to develop yourself and your understanding of what it is you're doing in terms of training philosophy and all of that. But most everybody can do that and should do that. But the trust piece of it, the trust factor that I got from Randy, uh, helped me do everything. It helped me have the confidence to go and take over a program like MIT.
Awesome. Thank you for that.
Julie, you talk a lot about leadership here, and you and I have had conversations about this ad nauseum. And you talk about great coaches, right? And I think all of us are trying to figure out what do great coaches do that everybody else doesn't do. And you've been fortunate in your career to work with some, like Raleigh and Lori, two names that everyone identifies with success and the ability to develop their athletes. So what is it that like the really good coaches in any sport? I mean, you know swimming really well. You got to be at the Paris Olympics with some
Yep.
Olympic level swim coaches. So what do the best coaches do, you think? What are their core values? What are their principles? They all have different ways to go about training, right? So it's not a
Yep.
training issue. What do
No,
they do that I think other people are missing?
I think great coaches, they they help each other. They work with each other. They work for the students. They're able to identify what they're doing and why they're doing it, whether it's a training piece of it or it's recruiting or it's even just having a one-on-one with a student and you're deciding on, race plans or anything like that, developing those relationships. I think it goes toward having the whole reason in mind. And again, our entire job is measured by student outcomes. And those of us who love watching students succeed and reach their goals, and ultimately I feel it has to be their goals, not my goals for them. It has to be their goals. I think the coaches that help facilitate that take ownership over the things that we are responsible for, but allow the students to take ownership over everything else. I mean, the students are the ones who have to get on the track and do it. So not taking credit for those things, but taking ownership over our responsibility and allowing the students to gain so much because it has to be their goals. It's their team, allowing them to work toward a team identity with the leadership of some of the juniors and seniors and those who want to keep going in the right direction. I mean, I think the hard part for me is when you're with a program and they do things just because we've always done it. And that's not a great answer. That's not a great reason. If there's a good reason for why you've always done it, because it helps with team culture or it helps with, whatever it happens to be, that's a good reason for it. So for me, I think that coaches do those things. Coaches definitely, great coaches have, ownership and responsibility, but they allow the students to do it also. And I think we all got our chance for the most part. Those of us who are coaches, a lot of us were athletes also. That doesn't mean everybody was. Some of the best coaches, weren't necessarily the best athletes, but it's not about us anymore. It's more about the students. And again, their goals, what they want to do. Last year's women's team was kind of an example of that for us. Once they got on a roll, they knew what they want. They knew they were capable of it. We didn't have to tell them. We didn't have to say, hey, guys, let's go win a national title. They already knew it was possible. They knew that they could do it. And it was our job to make the right decisions and put them in the right places for training and for competition. And, as a teammate to help facilitate that, because we couldn't make it happen. They actually had to do it. So maybe that answers the question about what great coaches do. But I think, more so it's allowing the students to do it. And we talk a lot about it, the most important, person out there, whether it's the person that's winning the national title or whether it's the person that didn't get to go to the meet because they didn't qualify, everybody wears MIT on their shirt. So we're all out there representing our team and representing our school, and it has to be ours. It has to be, important on that level. It can't just be, you know what, I want to go out there and run XY time simply because, it would be fun to run that fast. It would be, but when it's tied to a slightly larger purpose, team outcome, I think it's just more meaningful.
That's a lot to unpack in that one. There were like
Sorry,
that's awesome.
language.
There were so many great nuggets in there. I mean, and our philosophies align so much right there, but there are a ton of nuggets to mine into this one. I wrote down a quick little thing like re-examining and growth and what that looks like. And as you were speaking, that's what I wrote down. I'd love for you to sort of maybe take thought back to where you were in year one as a coach and maybe where you are now. What's the biggest shift that you've seen growth in yourself? Are there things that you do differently? Or not? Like either way is fine. Just more of like how do you grow as a coach?
Yep. I think it's funny because now, having done this for so many years, there's a lot less that surprises me than it did at first. And I remember maybe it was probably my first year working at BC where, there are things that you feel very passionate about. And things that are really important. And Randy's like, great, Julie, go with that. Or where there's things you get really frustrated with where somebody doesn't understand, or it's not not students, other people. And he's like, really, this is not the most important thing. If this is really not the most important thing, you got to let it go. So being able to prioritize for me definitely is how I've changed a lot. Being able to put, what is really important kind of in your mindset week to week, and being able to focus on that, realizing that students are college students, that they're going to do some things that you're like, well, we probably shouldn't have done that. But I also, I don't overreact. I certainly am able to put it in perspective. So growth in that sense is the overall perspective. How athletics fits into their experience in college has also helped me a lot, because clearly it's identified most of what I do for the rest of my life. It's my career and I love it. I had that experience to being able to take advantage of being a student athlete in college. And I think the more that we can say that to students, that, this is a limited window. You've got 4 or 5. I mean, now it's 6 or 7, but you got a lot of years, not a lot of years. It's not a lot. It goes by very fast. So trying to make the right decisions. And I will still always talk about things and focus on things that I'm very passionate about. Recovery is one of them. That's one thing that I won't sacrifice for the students. That recovery is sometimes, more important than the workout. And that's something that I think I've gained. All of the other, things that go along with coaching, you just get a lot. You just get to see a lot, and you're surprised less. So I think that that's helped me build better relationships with students, because I don't feel like I'm judgmental of them. I feel like I learn a lot from what they bring to the table, who they are, what they're interested in, why they want to do it. I think maybe I've just gotten better at that over the course of years, letting the students drive a lot of that. Randy had said it before, and I agree it too, that, we as coaches can't want it more for them than they want it for themselves. And being able to figure out how to do that. And if they really, really want it, allow that. And if they don't really want it, either help them figure out a way to get there or meet them where they are. And then it helps build a little bit from there.
Awesome. So good.
Yeah, I think so. Even though sometimes as coaches, we our jobs rely on it a little bit more
Yeah,
than theirs.
for sure.
I mean, so at BC, you guys consistently were getting women's teams to the national championships in cross country. Now you're such a high level, and the expectation to contend for national championships at MIT is really high. You talk about building that trust with your relationships. Like, what's your process in doing that? I mean, every coach says that. I think we know there's research to back up the relationship you build with your athletes predicts outcome, or has a great deal to do with that. So, I mean, what are the things that you found work for you and your staff to help your athletes believe there's that trust, and hopefully give them confidence when they get to championship time or race day, when they need to put it together, that they're able to just kind of relax and perform?
Yeah. Yep. I think a lot of that comes from repetition and consistency. We do that when we have the opportunity to be very consistent, and over and over and over again, do the right things right, and correct some of the things that aren't right, whether it happens to be rest, recovery, being prepared, teaching them. Most of the time I find that I end up getting to, the time frame with seniors that they could pretty much do it all on their own. They know when to show up, where to show up, what to bring, what to eat, how much to sleep, what their warm up is. So all of those things just have taken care of themselves through repetition. And I don't think it's about trusting the workout. I mean, they could look up any number of workouts that they wanted to. They could talk to any other coach about training plans and things like that. But understanding why we're doing it and explaining it to them, I think I've probably gotten better at, letting the students take ownership of it. And I think that's still part of how we do it, that if it's theirs and they realize, even if you tell them what the workout's going to be and why you're doing the workout, then they own it. And there's never a blame. There's never a coach told me to do this or coach wanted me to do this, that they have a say in the process. So, we do things, it's helpful, I find, to give students kind of an outline of what your training week is going to look like. I don't give specific workouts at the beginning of the week. Some coaches do. And honestly, I think that I learned that from Randy too. He sends it in an email. If they want to know what the workout's going to be, they'll be able to open the email and read the workout. If they just want to know they have a workout on Tuesday and the type of workout, then they just talk about it. They don't even open it. So they don't need to know the specifics, because some people get stressed out by that and some people don't. So finding ways to do things like that, which meet the students where they are. I send the workouts by email, but I send the overall kind of outline of the week, ahead of time. I'll say, on Monday, we're going to do this kind of thing. On Wednesday, we're going to do this. Tuesday's always built in recovery. We always have a lift these days. So I think that they know what to expect. Coaches who can be organized like that are helpful. And most coaches do that. They definitely do that. But I think the nuance of the email and whether they open it or don't open it is helpful. Sometimes our coaches will send it in like an attachment to the email. So they'll read what's in the email. Or they'll send it as a live Google Doc, which they can look at, check ahead of time without having to wait for that. And we all have kind of different strategies. Todd does it in a PDF. I do it in email. Riley does a Google Doc. So they all work. It's when the students know what they can look toward. And I find the MIT students, I've learned this over the last couple of years, want to know more specifics ahead of time, well ahead of time. I didn't used to write my cool down in the workout plans. And now they wanted to know exactly what cool down was. Okay, all right, I can adjust from there. So I don't take things like that personally. And I think over the time, if you end up being a coach long enough, where when students ask you for things, that it's not really personal, that it's more hopefully about what they actually need. And if I can provide a little bit of stress relief for them, great. I'm happy to do that as well. So yeah, what we do for those strategies are those types of things. At MIT, it's different, and this helps with team culture for sure. And BC was like this when Randy and I were there, is that we all train at the same time of day, which is not always the same in a college environment. There's always going to be those times where if someone's just doing an easy run, go ahead, do an easy run. But even the distance runners, Riley gathers them together to meet for 5 to 10 minutes during our regular practice window, even if they've already done their run earlier in the day. On the days that they're doing easy runs. So it's only a short commitment. They swing by, touch point, just to kind of see how everybody's doing. It's nice to be able to do that. I like to give the students obviously some freedom in training to be able to do, say, their pre-meet day much earlier in the day instead of late at night. We train really late. We train from 5 to 7. And that is a window set by the school where there's no other classes and there's no office hours, so nothing can be required. It's a lot easier when you're a student at MIT to know that this is the time frame. So it changes very little for them. And I think that structure helps, and that's good. And it fits into their day. Same with at BC, we trained at noon. We trained at noon every day because it was our practice track time, but also a lot of the major classes that they were taking were in the afternoons, and you didn't want to conflict with those. And some of our nursing students took morning classes. So by being able to train at the same time every day, the students in different event groups get to know each other a little bit better. They get to see each other more often. Maybe they're, riding in vans with each other to wherever we happen to go. So I think that just innately creates that, I guess, camaraderie across event groups, but we still work really hard at it. Our students take ownership over that. We have a weekly newsletter that they write. So someone from every event group is responsible for writing the recap of what happened in that event group that week. And it could be like 2 or 3 things. It could be very basic. It doesn't have to be performance outcomes, because we've all seen those in the results. So that's pretty nice. I think that this team has done that. Our students make practice is a no phone zone unless you're using your phone to video. If a coach has asked you to pull out a phone, they don't bring their phones to practice. They leave them in the locker room, or they put them in their bags. Nobody's checking phones during practice and things like that. So being present is a lot of what MIT culture already had before I was there. And the students wanted to continue that. And I said, great, let's do it. They don't want homework at meets. So nobody sits in the stands and does homework at meets. Unless, of course, it's a BU meet and you've got an hour and 45 minutes before the next person on MIT runs. So a couple meets are a little bit different structure because those meets go so long. And if you want to be there to support your team, great. But yeah, for the most part, like a conference championship or any other meet where people are competing, nobody at MIT is sitting in the stands. You're either warming up, competing, or cheering. So I think small little things like that in terms of culture go a long way, but that kind of goes back to knowing why you're doing something. I mean, the reason for that is team support and knowing what your team is. As long as we're not doing it just to do it. Yeah, those are just things that we do right now that work well.
Yeah. I love that. I started when I was coach. I used to coach high school and was a head high school lacrosse coach, and I would send out our practice plan at 10 a.m. each day. I did that. I did that because I wanted this. When I was in college, I needed to know what I could eat before practice. So knowing what the day's practice plan was sort of important for me. The running joke was I would have 2 dinners and a late breakfast and then 2 dinners after practice. And what I found was the students were really interested in that, hearing about what they were going to do that day. The feedback I got was incredible. The other thing I noticed was it made our practices much more efficient because they knew what they were doing. So they'd go from one thing to another. I didn't have to set up a drill 15 times. Like they would say, oh, we're doing that drill. Okay, we know what we're doing. So having that efficiency on the field was really important in a compact window in high school. So again, great lessons, awesome tidbits to mine out of this. I'd love to hear your sort of differences between you coach Division I, now you're in Division III. Could you talk to us a little bit about what the big differences are? Obviously, you're still competing at a super high level and winning championships, but I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on the differences between the Division I and Division III level.
Well, at first, I was a little bit concerned personally before I even explored the MIT job. I didn't think that I would necessarily want to go to Division III because I love the competitiveness of Division I. I loved how your expectations could be as high as you wanted them to be. And I felt like it would be possible that maybe you didn't have the same level of commitment to the team that you would at Division I. And I actually found it to be the opposite. I found that there was more buy-in and more commitment on this MIT team, every single person, than there was from every single person at the Division I level. And that's not to say anything negative about anyone on the team, because I loved coaching every athlete on every team that I've coached. But sometimes people are on a team just to be on a team versus they're on a team because they really want to be the best thrower, jumper, hurdler, sprinter, whatever it happens to be. I think they also, at least at MIT, they want to be the very best team, the very best competitors. And that it's kind of the nature of track and field lends itself to a school like MIT because they're very process driven in what they do day to day. We are very process driven. You can't just say, I want to go run 4 flat in the mile and just do it. You know, it requires a significant amount of work. And I thought that for me, if the level of the performance outcome was lower, that there'd be less buy-in and less commitment. And that's just not the way that it is at all. I find that everybody at MIT wants to improve upon themselves. They want to improve for themselves and for their team. That if they don't want to, they just aren't on the team. And that's okay. That's actually okay. Sometimes at Division I, and this will change, sometimes you're there to keep a spot. Sometimes you're there because of how successful you were in high school. You feel like you have to be that successful in college, or there is a previous coach or parents or anybody else that's just expecting you to do it. Or if you earn half a scholarship, that's how you're paying for school. Sometimes it might not be that meaningful to you 2 years in, that unfortunately you just kind of have to stay with it to keep that scholarship, and things like that will change, and they have changed a little bit, even in the last 3 years. But it's one of those things where, and Randy always did a wonderful job of making sure that the students, that they really wanted it, that they believed in it, that they wanted to do it, and there was no shame if that ever became not the case. We had as many non-scholarship students compete as well, if not better than scholarship students. So I think that piece of it, Randy always did a great job. There was no differentiation between recruited, non-recruited, scholarship, non-scholarship. If you were on the team, you had every ability and opportunity to achieve just like anybody else. And that's actually what I found I love so much about those teams. And also what I love about coaching in Division III, the scholarship piece of it doesn't play in. And at least at MIT, the admissions piece also doesn't play in. Every single person who got there earned it. And they all respect one another, and they're all doing a lot of different things, a lot of interesting things. So that piece of it, the buy-in and the commitment was there. I also really wanted to see if we could, and if I could be a part of a team that had a truly well-rounded team that had distance, sprints, jumps, throws, and pole vault, which I didn't have pole vault, no pole vault experience, put it that way, at least from the high school and college experience, that could put together a true team with all these different groups on it and actually be successful at it. And I was lucky that when I went into MIT, the coaches that were there, they were able to they were already doing it. Already doing it. Everybody was coaching with such a high level of expertise that I didn't have to do any of that. They were great already. So yeah, they're really, for me, I think it surprised me. I also, it is really nice to be with MIT and trying to compete at the highest level
Yeah.
of Division III, because if you look at some of those performances, they're really, really good. And we love that. We love that. And I do love development, because there are going to be people that come in as first years that are not at all what they could do, and then by the time they're seniors, they're really achieving, and they're really holding themselves to some expectations, and we get to see them achieve what they want.
Awesome. Thank you for that.
So you guys have won, and you've proven that you can have a well-rounded team by winning an NCAA title in cross country, indoors, in outdoors, clenching the Triple Crown. So how do you move forward from here? I think so many of us coaches, that's the ultimate, right? The ultimate goal is to just get there and have one moment like that. But how has that changed the expectations to repeat that and be consistently competing from that? Is that more internal? Do you feel that now there's more of an expectation from the administration? I mean, obviously from the kids, they want to do that again as well.
Yep.
So how are you as a staff navigating that?
Well, I think for us, we have to have some process, some steps along the way that also shows achievement and success, whether it's on our top 10 lists, or it's a certain place in the region, or it's winning the conference championship, which we always want to try to win the conference championship. I think for us, we have to have those like along the way steps. And it does feel a little bit, I wouldn't say pressure. I feel like it's expectation that comes from people who are not intimately connected with the team, where people are like, oh, wow, you guys, even last year, you won cross country, you won indoor, you're going to win outdoor? Almost like it was a given, where those of us who coach know just how hard it is to do any one of those things singularly. And then when you get to the third one, they're all different events. It's not the same. It's not the same.
Everyone
meet.
thinks when you're good, it's easier, but now you got new problems, and that is
No,
hard to coach
exactly.
with that expectation.
Exactly. And I don't think that, the expectation is to win a national title every year. Do we want to win more? 100%. Absolutely. And I think that we know that we're going to be capable of that. We also have to acknowledge that in order to get where we were, it took a lot of steps to get there. It took a lot of things going right and putting things in the right order. I actually even think our assistant coach Riley put it best, that we are always building towards something. The men won one cross country and one outdoor, and they were second by half a point indoor before I got there. So then you graduate a couple people and it changes, it resets. And that first year, I remember talking with the students, we're not trying to replace the 20 points that graduated or the 30 points that graduated. We're not trying to replace those people. And we're not even necessarily trying to replace those points in aggregate. We're still trying to build. We're trying to target areas where we think we could be successful and build students in those event groups. We're not simply just trying to replace somebody who's graduated. That's never possible. And I think for us, I like to think of it kind of in blocks, in groups, that, we're looking toward, first we got to win a conference title. Second, we've got to, qualify X number of people to the national championships. And so we're looking toward total numbers. We're looking for people performing at the national championships. This year we had some freshmen and sophomores on the men's side make it indoor and make it outdoor. And I think when we're talking about always building towards something, that national title is always there. Then it's the national podium, top 4 or top 10 or all of those things. All, I think, have to be viewed as successful in their own right. That coming off of a year where you win 3 national titles, you can't look at, 5th or 6th or 7th as a failure. You still have to look at that as this is a top 10 team. And that's what I actually think I'm most proud of for the women outdoor this year, is that we were 10th. We were a top 10 team, and it was so many different people scoring it's a different group of people. You have to be building towards something. You have to allow room and space for new people to come in and do new things and make each one of those things special. That trying to replicate it is really hard, but I'm not gonna lie, we're trying to win again. We want to win again. We are definitely gonna win. Recruiting the right people who realize that they can contribute to what we've done in the past without being better than what was done in the past. It's almost just creating a different version, a best version of whatever team looks like that year. Are we ever going to get someone to win, shot put and weight indoor for 2 years in a row? Unlikely. Unlikely, but could, just like that. We're never going to replace Alexis. She was so special to the program, but are there other people doing pretty amazing things? Yes. Like, we've got a humongous javelin crew right now. Great. It's going to look different, but every one of those things I feel like has to be looked at as successful and working toward something. Otherwise you're just trying to chase something that already happened.
Awesome. One of the things that I just wrote down was recruiting the right people. You mentioned that it immediately jumped. I'd love for you. I mean, we try to mentor the next generation of coaches. That's what we're trying to do here. Would you give us a little secret sauce right there? I'm like, how do you go about? Oh no, how do do you go about it?
Yeah.
What is there a process?
For us, it's different. I mean, it's definitely different at MIT because we don't influence admissions at all. We give input to admissions. We get to know the students. We write down what we think about their character, their leadership, and their athletics. Those three pieces, character, leadership, and athletics, could contribute positively to our team, could contribute positively to the MIT community. So it's easy to quantify a lot of what their athletics does, but then talking to them about their character and the leadership that we think that they could bring helps admissions, because it, I guess, adds one more piece to the application puzzle. It doesn't guarantee anything. We've seen people with perfect SAT scores not be accepted. And it's hard to put a finger on that. And so for us, we do a lot of like the initial numbers conversations early on. And that doesn't, you try to keep it non-personal, even if you feel like they are the best 800-meter runner in the country. If their SAT scores or their high school grades are not strong enough, you have to be able to say, listen, this doesn't look like it's going to work out because of X, Y, and Z, but show me better test scores, or talk to your professors, talk to your teachers about, could you take a more advanced curriculum in math and science? So knowing what it is that they need to be successful at MIT, you also can't, and I learned this from Randy too, if admission says no, they say no. That ultimately they don't want to have anybody that isn't prepared to be successful at your school. Boston College was a very challenging school for a lot of different reasons. And sometimes, there was pretty strict requirements around the TOEFL. If you didn't have a significant mastery of English, you were really going to struggle in philosophy, theology, and all of the courses you had to take. So if admission says no, you have to move on. So I think for me, recruiting the right people at MIT is, first, you've got to get those numbers down, and then asking the students, well, okay, you're only taking AP Calc BC. Was there something more advanced in your school? If the answer is no, okay. If the answer is yes, why aren't you taking it? And you have to understand that may impact your admission. So when we tell students all of those things, that's helpful. I also think for us, our process, and Derek Russo, who was coaching at MIT for years, he's now coaching at Virginia, but he's still I'm very, very close with him. He's great. I learned from him when he was recruiting MIT students, listen, if you don't want to wait for an answer until the day that admissions makes the answer, that's when they do. We don't find out ahead of time. We find out the day that the students find out whether or not they're going to be accepted. If you don't want to wait that long, if you are not going to bet on yourself, then fine. That's okay. Go ahead and take the bird in the hand. That's not a bad choice. It's a very good choice. But we're telling you all the information we can tell you. We're telling you it looks great. It might not actually work out. You might not get in. But if you're willing to wait and you want to bet on yourself, if it works out, this is going to be great. So for us, it already creates a system where the students who are accepted and who get there are 100% bought in. So I think going through that and not being too worried about, trying to say, look, these are the top 3 sprinters. These are the top 3 jumpers. We have to get these people. We have to get these people. It's less about that, more about the process of how it takes to get there. And you notice in those conversations some red flags. You notice if students are saying, well, this coach told me I have to decide by this date. You can acknowledge that. You can say, I understand. If that's what you need to do, please do it. But if you're looking for an answer for me, I can't give that to you. So the students who end up being really upset about that or nervous about that or just don't want to handle it, you know that that's not somebody you're going to spend a whole lot of time on. It's hard because the ones that sometimes they don't get in and you were dying for them to get in and you know that they would have been great. But for us, it's people who have a lot of that process mentality because that's what they're going to have to do in their labs. They're going to have to try and try and try and not get it right most of the time. Same with track and field. They're going to have to work. You can't PR every single meet, but you can certainly work toward things. That for us, recruiting those students has to be a non-judgmental, just straight line put with some of the standards, athletic standards and admission standards. So we need to tell them all that is, if they're well off where they need to be competitive on our team, then they can't be on our team yet. So we don't actually, I love the developmental athletes, certainly, but we are not going to take people who are too far outside this range and put them in a situation where it's just going to be too hard for them and they're going to be miserable.
I think it's so important, right? Like we're talking about sport, but the larger community that you're focused on, right? And knowing it's half the battle of recruiting is knowing what you can and can't do as a coach. And having that relationship with fellow administrators, in different offices, that, and especially in the admission side, is so crucial, to your own success, which is great.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. No question.
Julie, I know you and I have talked about these things a lot, but I think if we look at the numbers here, there are, in our sport of track and field, less than 20% of head coaches, according to the Tucker Institute, are led by women. And so you're leading not just a women's program, but a men's and women's program as a female. And so doing that, I think, is a huge accomplishment and doing it well. And you're managing expectations, communication, and relationships with administrators. Like, what challenges do you think you've faced in this space that maybe are unique as a female? And what guidance would you offer to other women that are trying to rise into those head coaching or administrative roles? Especially, I think, as we see, there's less coaches now that are administrators, and we have administrators now that maybe are making decisions without even understanding the challenges that we face as coaches and dealing with the student athletes on a day-to-day.
Yeah, I think that in and of itself is one major challenge, is administrators who've never been coaches or who haven't worked with student athletes in the capacity that we have. I think educating, being comfortable enough to educate your sport administrator on whether it's your sport or the individuals that you're working on or your own needs. It's hard. It took years and years for me to get to the point where I felt like I could have an open conversation with somebody who was superior to me and actually advocate for what I need. And I do feel like, I don't know if that's being a woman in this environment, but like we've talked about before, to be able to say, I think this, or we should do this, or what do you think about this? And just approach it from a standpoint of feeling like you know what you're doing and you know what you want, to have the confidence to be able to do that. First, it takes a lot of people who have supported you and, allowed you to do that. And the coaches like Lori and Raleigh and the swim coaches, Brooks and Woody and Jackie at NC State, they did that. They certainly did that. And I didn't notice then, maybe I was young enough, but I didn't notice then any difference at all in the way that they treated me or spoke to each other, that they gave each other the kind of responsibility. So Jackie was a female coach on the women's swim side. And both Jackie and Lori, like the way that everybody spoke to each other and treated each other was just with the utmost respect. And I had never experienced anything different until all of a sudden you're then surprised by, wait a minute, are they saying that to me because I'm a woman here? Because they don't think I know what I'm talking about? So there's situations that fortunately for me, I didn't encounter until I was old enough and experienced enough to realize that was challenging. That in a sport like this, in athletics in general, it tends to be a lot more men who are assistant coaches and a lot more men who are head coaches, a lot more. Chances are, if you're on a track and field staff, there's probably only one female coach. So of 6, maybe. And that's a challenging situation to be in because you don't know necessarily and some of the men that I've worked with are phenomenal and fantastic. And all of the ones I work with now are great. And they respect women and respect what they're doing. But there's just so few of them. Maybe it's because of a lifestyle. Once you have children, you kind of want to have a little bit more space. You want to have a little bit more flexibility to be with your kids and give them what they need. Maybe it's having a partner who understands that and is able to take on a lot of the other responsibilities and a lot of different roles. And I've been lucky enough to experience all of that, women and girls in athletics is different now than it was when I was young, when we were all young. I think it's different, but it's still hard because I never identified it as anything different than being just younger in my coaching when I wasn't, as experienced enough, and then realize that it's almost like it's present. You have to ask yourself the question, is this because I'm a woman? So leading the team, I have to tell you, is actually not at all a challenge when it comes to me being a woman and them being men or them being women, because there's no structure for that at all. All the other coaches that I work with right now, not all of them, I should say. Whitney's female, and we had a lot of volunteer coaches who were women, but the men never behaved that way toward me. So the students never behave that way. And I think this is what we're doing and this is how we're doing it. I don't have to be, and sometimes I've had recommendations from people to say, oh, you should do things this way, or you should say it this way. And then I realized that just wouldn't be authentic. So I need to do it the way that I'm going to do it. And I think that's a challenge for women to do things the way that they want to do it. If they want to be yellers and screamers, great. If that's who they are. If they want to be calm and quiet and reserved, that's also fine. That I think we need to get away from the picture of what we think a head coach is. I mean, I couldn't be a football coach. I feel like football coaches yell a lot. Mostly it's to be heard by that many people, but it's hard to do that. I think that I would find that challenging, and I respect people who can handle that and who can do it. I prefer the ability to interact with small groups and large groups on a different scale than that. But I feel like the way that people treat each other and just, acknowledging that it's okay to be the way that you want to be and the way that you want to do it. I've always liked that when people ask questions, and Randy and I had a great relationship, and he and I were able to talk about things, and he'd say what he was doing, and I'd say, well, I am thinking this or thinking that, and he would actually listen to it and consider it. So I had never experienced anything other than that to that point. So.
Yeah, I think there's such a difference too in this sport of the more you know and the older you get, the more you feel that ability to advocate yourself, especially as a female coach. And I know, some of our best helpers in that were each other. I remember even you when you had one of yours and you saying like, oh, my administration made sure I had an extra room so my mom could help with the baby on the road. I mean, that was huge for me to have that in my mind, so that when I was surprisingly in that situation again, and it's only a month or so or two after I've had that baby and I want to be there for my athletes at a championship, I feel confident of making that same request of saying, hey, like, you're not just at a track meet for an hour, you're at a track meet all day. And so, it's very challenging sometimes to know that you've got the needs of your child and the needs of your athletes who you care just as deeply about. And it has nothing to do with you not wanting to be competitive and not wanting to take it seriously. It's just, having the support you need to be able to do both of those things at the best level that you can.
Oh, absolutely. And for it to be just okay that it looks a little bit different. And it's okay if I have my 6-month-old in a baby carrier and I'm at the track. I'm not a bad parent for doing that, but also I'm not a bad coach for doing it either.
Right.
And I think that, you're absolutely right. And having a community of people, for me, having both communities of men and women that are doing this, that understand it, and then know what it's like. Because I mean, even now I will talk to, they're not track coaches, but other coaches at MIT who are women who have young children, and we practice late in the evening. I'm like, how do you do this? How do you get home in time to see your kids for bedtime? Like, how do you make sure that this works? And one of them gave me the best tip ever. She goes, I bought a scooter. I was like, really? And she's like, yeah, if I end practice 10 minutes early, I'm out the door and I take my scooter to my car because we park a little bit farther away, and you can get home in time for bedtime. That made the difference for me. I wouldn't have even thought about it. I was like, oh, wow, you're right about it. That saves me like 30 minutes in my day, which is a lot more time with my kiddos. So having kind of the community of both people who understand it, men and women. And I think it's hard in administration because until there are enough people who are coaches who end up becoming administrators, it's just harder to understand that.
Yeah. 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 Mentoring and developing those around you. So for the coach who's early in their career right now, what's one thing you wish somebody had told you?
Oh gosh.
Sorry.
Wow. No, that's okay. That's a good question. That's a very good question. Huh. Something I wish that they'd told me. Clearly I wasn't prepared for this question.
It's okay.
And maybe it's because I don't know if I would have wanted to hear it before I was ready to learn it.
I like
we
that.
can always, we can tell our students things ahead of time, but they just don't know it or believe it. I mean, I'd love to tell all of our first years, it's going to be very hard to expect out of yourself what you got out of high school as a senior in your first year. It's a huge adjustment. It's an adjustment to life. It's an adjustment to the new school, academics, everything. It's a total adjustment, even if you only went 20 minutes down the road. I think maybe it would have been to get to know other opposing coaches earlier. It took me probably until, 10 years in at least to see the other coaches that we coach against. We're in track and field, always mixed in with everybody. We're not on the sidelines. It's not basketball. We're on your opposing sidelines and there's only other people. That the opposing coaches on other programs, to get a chance to speak with them more often and a little bit earlier. I was so concentrated and so focused, not in a bad way, on the athletes and just coaching the athletes and just making sure that I was doing everything I could to get them ready to go. And we all know there's so many logistics that happen with a track meet that those are very important things to do. But just taking the time to get to know them earlier, even if they were older and intimidating, it's not, you want to get to know them. And I actually think now I try to do that with our assistant coaches when we go, whether it's the convention or we're at a track meet or anything like that. Like, oh, hey, Liam, he's our new pole vault coach. Have you met so-and-so? He coaches at this school and has been doing it for 15 years. Get a chance to know him. And the more I feel like I can do that for our assistant coaches, the younger assistant coaches especially, the better it will go. I almost feel like I should have done it earlier, and now I feel great about it. It's not like I missed out on anything because I'm still here. I'm lucky to still be here. But we see in coaching, women stay in it, less than 7 years. If they can make it past that 7-year mark, then they stay in it, and maybe they can be in it for the long haul. So it's in those first 7 years that, you're definitely going to feel a little intimidated talking to somebody who's been it for 25 years and clearly has more success at that point, measured by any measure of success at that point. 25 years or anything like that in the profession, they've seen a lot, they've done a lot. It doesn't have to be, winning 3 national titles, but I'm happy when I get a chance to talk with younger coaches, and I love for our younger assistant coaches to get introduced. And I think other coaches being able to do that would be kind of one of the things.
Awesome. Thank you for that. That's great.
Yeah, that's great advice, Julie. Julie, well, this has been great. As always, we'll have to catch up again sometime soon. And thank you so much for being a guest on our show today.
Thanks,
sure.
Julie.
Thanks for having me. All right. Thanks.
Thanks for joining us on Sideline Ascent.
Be sure to like and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts on Spotify or Apple Music so you never miss an episode.
And stay connected with us on YouTube and Instagram. We love hearing what messages resonated with you or who you'd like to hear from next.
If this conversation hit home for you, share it with somebody who appreciates it, a friend, a teammate, or a coach.